All right, and Chris, we if it's easier, we might just drive your presentation here. So just give us the prompt and we'll switch slides. Okay, it is 12 o'clock. And we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Tony Well, with automation specialist here with the Reynolds Company in New Orleans. And joining me today is Bill Brock, our coding specialist here in New Orleans. And I'm going to let Bill do the intro slides and our guest speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Wayne. So this month we're going to have components for hazardous locations as our topic. It's going to be kind of an overview of hazardous locations with a little bit of specific information on the push buttons area. This is going to be kind of the first in a series of components information for users groups. We're planning on one in January. That's going to be specifically on intrinsic safety. Going forward next month, we are planned October 19th, the users group meeting on Studio 5000 and the process control updates. The following month, November, we usually do not have a users group meeting because of automation fair. So automation fair this year is going to be in Philly, December the 12th. As a result of that, we're going to have the best in show from that automation fair on the products that we, Wayne and I, followed through both Rockwell products and the Encompass Partner products. And we're going to have a best in show. So that Philadelphia Automation Fair is going to be from November the 14th to 15th, preceded by the process the piece of the 2 days before that. But this year it's going to be in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So that's coming up real quick. So keep in mind, we look like to see you there. So today's keynote speaker is going to be, or presenter is going to be Christopher Holly. He's the product manager for specifically working on the hazardous location product. So Holly, Christopher, sorry, if you want to take it from here, go ahead.
Very good. Thank you for the introduction. Can you hear me all right in the room and on the phone?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we can get started here. As previously mentioned, my name is Chris Holly. I am a product manager at Rockwell Automation. I've been with the company for almost 10 years, and I've been in this product management role for the past roughly 4.5 years. I currently support our hazardous location push button portfolios, which we'll be covering at a high level detail today, specifically the Bulletin 800G and the Bulletin H Type 7.9 products. We do have another product manager, Don King, that supports the Bulletin 800R push button solutions, but I will be covering those products as part of the presentation today as well. I also do support our two-hand control push button solutions. So specifically the 800Z zero force buttons and the 800P palm buttons. And then I do also support some of our electromechanical condition sensing products as well. So I support a variety of different products, and I'm very excited to talk to you today about hazardous and the solutions that Rockwell Automation has to offer. So we can advance the slide.
Okay.
So before I get into our conversation today, I know Bill previously talked about this in a prior presentation, but I just wanted to let everyone know, before you begin the process of selecting products for hazardous location, just make sure that you have conducted or are in the process of conducting an area classification study or an area classification evaluation. Those are really critical to evaluate all the components that will be used within the industrial environment and can really ensure that you've selected the most appropriate classification for a hazardous area. So I did just want to make sure to mention that before we get into the conversation today. At this time, that Rockwell Automation does not provide an area classification assessment. So, feel free to work with other companies to determine what that area is. And once you have those specifications for the industrial application, we could be more than happy to work with you to determine what solutions we have that meet your specific requirements. So we can proceed to the next slide. So at a very high level today, we'll be covering hazardous location classifications. We'll look at some of the tools that we currently have at Rockwell Automation or Allen Bradley for hazardous location solutions. And then I'll be talking about our 3 different push button portfolios that we have specific for hazardous locations. So again, those are the Bulletin 800G, the Bulletin 800R, and the Bulletin 800H Type 7.9 product portfolios. So if you could advance to the next slide. So you may have seen this in the past. I know Bill had really great overview on a prior presentation, but as we're talking about the class division scheme, which is most prevalent within North America for a variety of hazardous location applications, there are multiple parts that form a marking or a classification of a hazardous area. So to cover this at a very high level, first, as part of that area assessment and classification, you have to determine what the hazardous class is going to be. So there are 3 different classes. Class 1 is flammable gases, vapors, or liquids. Class 2 is a combustible dust. And class 3 is more of a burning hazard, ignitable fibers or flyings. And after you classify the hazard, then you classify the area. And one thing that's really important to note as part of the area classification, there's a misconception that Division 1 is suitable for a lot more difficult chemicals or more potent chemicals or dusts that are present in a hazardous environment. Really, that's not true. The area classification is more so based on the amount of time that that hazard will be present through the duration of the calendar year. So in the class division scheme, we classify Division 1 as the hazard being normally present and Division 2 as being the hazard abnormally present. And then after that, we have gas and dust groups. So to go along with the class 1 gases, vapors, and liquids, we have 4 different groups. They are A for acetylene, B for hydrogen, C for ethylene, and D for acetone, or other equivalent gases that have roughly the same molecular size. And then to pair the class 2 for the dust areas, we have dust groups E for metal dusts, group F for carbonaceous dusts, and G for flour, grain, wood, and other dusts that could be present within the hazardous environment. And then lastly, at the end of the classification, we have a temperature class. Really what that is when we go through and we do testing on products, we determine how warm the product gets at a particular ambient operating temperature. And then we ensure that the correct product is selected such that the amount of temperature or energy that's required to ignite that hazardous substance, that the product stays below that. So T6 is the most stringent, and that's one of the most common temperature classes that you'll see as one of the lower ignition temperatures for gases and vapors and dusts within a hazardous area. So as an example, I just have a couple sample markings there. You may see class 1, division 1, given some gas groups, and then a temperature code. And you may also see class 2, which is your dust, division, gas groups, and then the corresponding temperature code. And again, all this comes from your area classification evaluation. And once you have the set of requirements, then you could select the most appropriate product that meets that specific hazardous location requirement. So if you could advance to the next slide, please. So when we're talking about class zones, these are commonly used within Canada, but they have migrated a little bit into certain parts of the United States and even potentially down in Latin America as well. It's very, very similar to what you saw for the class division scheme. So we have the 3 different classes and they're the same class 1, 2, 3. The only thing that's a little different is how they classify the area. So rather than seeing division 1 or division 2, they use zone 0, zone 1, and zone 2 for the gases, vapors, and liquids. And they use zone 20, zone 21, and zone 22 to classify the dust areas. So zone 0 is when the hazard is continuously present. Zone 1, it's likely to occur under normal conditions, and zone 2, it's not likely to occur under normal operating conditions. And again, this is very similar to class division where it's time bound, how long that hazard is going to be present over the duration of the calendar year. And then the equivalents, zone 20, zone 21, and zone 22. Zone 20 is when the hazard is continuously present. 21, it's likely to occur. And then zone 22, it's not likely to occur. Very similar to how we had the gas and dust groups, there also is an atmosphere group. So there's 3 different gas groups, 2A, 2B, and 2C. There's this special gas group that you may see from time to time in North America. It's 2B plus hydrogen. I've only seen that on a selection number of products, but just to make you aware that there is this additional gas group with the hydrogen for use within North America. And then there also is the dust groups 3B and 3C. And then fibers and flyings are 3A. And then very similar, we also have temperature class for the hazardous environment. The only difference is for dust type applications, they actually specify what that maximum surface temperature is that's permitted to be used within the hazardous environment. So just as an example of markings, you may see class 1, zone 1, atmosphere group 2B, and T6 for the temperature classification, or you may also see class 2, zone 22, 3C, and then actually specifying that surface temperature in degrees Celsius. So if you could move on to the next slide. Things are a little different once you get into the zone classification scheme. This is specific to ATEX or IECEX. There's a lot of parts of it. It almost looks like alphabet soup to a lot of people if you don't frequently work with these classifications day in and day out. So I'll cover them at a very high level overview, but there are some really great reference materials from some of the notified bodies that specifically break down all the different available markings for different hazardous areas and applications, since there really are so many. So as you can see in blue, kind of shown within the bracket for ATEX, they actually specifically require you to have the CE mark along with the notified body that did the evaluation, and then the ATEX symbol, which is the EX. And then there you classify the equipment group, which will either be 1 for mines or 2 for the surface. Typically, a lot of what I see in applications is equipment group 2 for the surface industry. Then they classify the equipment category, so either 1, 2, or 3, and that corresponds with the zone ratings, which are very similar to what we previously looked at for the class zone classification scheme. And then they classify the environment, gas or dust. So that's all part of the ATEX. And once you get into both ATEX and IECEX, they put in EX in that marking stand for explosion protection or a hazardous environment. Then they actually classify the protection type itself that the product utilizes. Just as an example, some of these flame proof could be protection type D, increased safety for E, or TD for dust protection. So it's really helpful if you can decipher and decode what this marking is. You can actually really attain a lot of information about specifically how the product is functioning and providing protection for a hazardous environment. There also are atmosphere groups, 1, 2, and 3, and then temperature classifications, which are very similar to what we previously saw for class division and class zone. And then lastly, they have a equipment protection level at the end of that marking string. So gas, it's GA for zone 0, GB for zone 1, and GC for zone 2. And then for dust, it's D, stands for dust, A, BB, or DC for zones 20, 21, and 22. And they also do have one specifically for mining as well. So just pretty good high-level overview. There's a lot of similarities, but there also are quite a bit of differences between the different schemes, class division and class zone, which you'll most frequently encounter within North America, and then this specific ATEX and IECEX zone scheme, which you may encounter for applications in Europe or other parts of the globe, such as Africa, Asia, Australia. So if you could advance to the next slide. So over the course of the past, I want to say 3 to 4 years, Rockwell Automation has put together this hazardous location toolbox for our distributors and our customers. Really, our goal and objective was to develop a number of resources for our distributors and our customers to find information very quickly pertaining to hazardous location components. So when we did this evaluation about 5 or 6 years ago, we found that it was very difficult to navigate through web pages and through catalogs to sift through specific DOC documents or other certifications to find some of this information and select an appropriate product family or specific part number for an application. So that's really what drove us to develop a lot of these different tools. The first one that I really think is great is we do have a hazardous location brochure. I know I've talked with Bill to get some more of these printed. I know we do have an electronic copy of this, but it's a really great tool at a high level overview. We do have a chart in there which you can match a hazardous location rating, such as Class 1 Division 2 or ATEX Zone 1, and any certifications that are required as part of that application. So it could be UL, could be CSA, could be ATEX, whatever it may be. And then you can very easily see on the left-hand side of that all the different product families that we offer from Rockwell Automation that meet those specific requirements. So it's a really great tool if you want to very quickly see over all of our industrial controls, our sensors and safety, kind of all the products that meet your specific requirements for an application. We do have some white papers that have been published for quite some time. They're a little antiquated, but I think they really are a great tool and resource if at a very high level overview, you want to look at some of the classifications we covered at a very high level, like the class division, class zone, or ATEX zone, and learn a little bit more about protection methods as well. And there's even a little bit of information about standards in there as well. We have a great tool online called Literature Library, or Lit Library. This is now where Rockwell is housing a lot of our documents for our products. So you may see installation instructions or technical data sheets, even brochures in there. But what we've done now is we've added all of the certifications into Lit Library. So, you know, utilizing a brochure or some of the other selection tools that I'll talk about here in a minute on the next slide. That gives you a good idea of what products we offer that meet specific hazardous location specifications, but then to actually find a DOC or certificate of conformance, we have all of that information available within Lit Library that you can find and download and review when you're putting together a bill of material or gathering documentation for a project. So really great resource there. Another one that we have is we recently implemented a direct dial code for our technical support team. So for those of you that will call our tech support group with any questions, we do have a code specifically for hazardous locations. So it takes you right to an individual who's been trained from our support staff, and they have a really good working knowledge of hazardous location products, the ratings, a little bit about standards and applications as well. And the objective there was if you have any, burning questions around hazardous locations, you can't get a hold of someone at the distributor, certainly feel free to reach out to anyone from our tech support team using that direct dial code. And the goal there is to provide you an answer or response within a very quick turnaround time. And then the last tool that we do have is a selection wizard. It's something that we've been working on developing with our software team. We launched this around a year ago at Automation Fair time last year, and it's a really great tool, and I'll talk about that in more detail on the next slide. If you could progress, please. Thank you. So within Proposal Works or Online Configurator, as long as you've been updating that tool or have updated it since the October-November timeframe that last year, there's a new wizard that you can select when you first open Proposal Works on the left-hand side of the selection menu or scroll menu, and that is a hazardous location wizard. So if you were to ever open that up, essentially what this is we've done an evaluation for every single product portfolio for our industrial controls business, as well as sensors and safety. We're always looking to add more Rockwell products to this and keep this up to date. And we've evaluated all of the hazardous ratings, the certifications, the protection methods that are used for those products in relation to hazardous locations. So if you just a couple quick questions around specifically what your specifications are or what ratings you require, and then it will automatically show you the different bulletin families that meet those requirements, and it will filter out any product family or specific catalog strings that don't meet that specific set of hazardous location specifications. So it's a really great, easy to use tool. Hopefully will allow you to find a bulletin family or even a catalog number in a matter of minutes, just looking at your ratings and certifications and some of your other criteria. So I would encourage everyone, if you haven't already seen that within Proposal Works or Raise, or even on our mobile platform within the Rock product catalog, which is what I'm showing in that middle picture there. Feel free to work and download that, or talk to Wayne, Bill, or someone from Rockwell, and we can walk you through that. If we do have time at the end of the presentation today after Q&A, I can also do a quick demo of what this wizard looks like, so you can kind of see how it functions. That's a really great tool, as I talked about, to find a specific product family or even part number or catalog number specifically for your application. But we do also have resources out on the ab.com website where we have specifications and a product selection tab there to help you find a product that you're looking for. And as I previously mentioned, within Literature Library, if you actually need the documentation for a product, such as, you know, a certification or some other documentation around hazardous locations, it's very easy to search within literature library under product family and download all the documents that you require. So if you could progress to the next slide, please. So now I'll cover some of our push button portfolios that we have on the market today for hazardous location applications. If we're looking at Class 1 or Class 2 Division 1, so an area where that hazard is continuously present, or Class 3 for the fibers and flyings, that's where we have an explosion-proof product portfolio, and that's our Bulletin 800H Type 7.9 product, and that's kind of shown in the middle picture at the bottom of the page. For Class 1 Division 2, we have two different options available on the market today. One of those is the Bulletin 800G, which is shown in the lower left corner, and then we also have Bulletin 800R, which is shown in the lower right-hand corner. So that'll probably be most of the applications that you would see for Class 1 Div 2. If you have customers that, you know, are building Division 1 areas and they have some Division 2, I've also seen where they just standardize on using a Division 1 solution throughout the entire plant as well, since Division 1 does encompass a Division 2 rating as well. For Zone 0, we don't currently at the moment have any solutions leveraging like an intrinsic safety type protection method. But for Zones 1 and Zone 2, that's where we have the Bulletin 800G portfolio in the lower left-hand corner. Those products have both a class zone rating as well as an ATEX zone rating. So if you could progress to the next slide. So I'm going to cover at a very high level the Bulletin 800G portfolio. So this has been on the market for at least 10 or 15 years. This was viewed as being more of our global product solution. We have the Class 1 Division 2 rating, as well as the Class 1 Zone 1 rating, which you may encounter in the United States. You may also frequently see it in Canada, but the product also does have an ATEX Zone 1 rating as well for anyone that's building products or solutions in compliance with EN 60079 series standards. Products do utilize EXD flame-proof protection method, the EXE increased safety, as well as a TB protection method, which is the actual enclosure, and gas group 2C and temp rating T6. So these products, again, do have a CUL US as well as ATEX certification, and they are available today as individual components. It's a 30.5 millimeter through hole if you're installing it on your own panel. We also do sell factory assembled stations. We have a 1-hole, 2-hole, or 3-hole, but you can actually buy directly from the factory as well, up to 3 enclosures gang together in a vertical orientation. So you could have up to 9 different operators within a single assembled station directly from the manufacturer. One thing that I have noticed in receiving a lot of questions from customers and tech support in the past was, you know, can I field configure an ATEX solution? The way that we sell the 800G today, as I kind of mentioned, you can buy the individual components, and because of that, we do sell the individual enclosures for you to populate in the field. But if you are configuring and putting together a solution in the field for an ATEX application, it's actually not required, or it's not permitted per the EN 60079 standards. We have to go through a quality audit at the place of manufacturing. We have to serialize internally each station for ATEX applications. It's all part of the standards as part of our quality audit. And so I just did want to let everyone know You know, certainly if you're using this for a UL application, you can field configure it without any problems, but there have been some customers that have ran into issues where they tried field configuring assembled stations for ATEX applications, and then when they were working with a notified body or an inspector on gathering the documentation, they didn't have proper authorization to assemble that configuration for that specific Zone 1 application. Another kind of caveat to this, so we do currently have some locking attachment accessories available on the market today. We have a locking guard and a locking cover. And in order to install those specifically on the 800G station, it requires drilling into the enclosure cover. So because of that, because you're modifying an enclosure for a hazardous application, you know, technically that does void any of the hazardous location ratings and certification. So what we're doing, you may have heard, but we're removing the guard and the locking cover for specifically the 800G stations as accessories later this year to hopefully prevent any confusion or problems during installation. And we're going to be offering assembled station solutions with the locking guard or locking cover installed from the factory. So that's our strategy moving forward. If you could progress to the next slide. And Wayne or Bill, if you have any 800Gs, I don't know if you're sharing them on the video or if you're passing them out around the room, but you can certainly do that. So with the 800G products, when would you want to utilize this push button solution? Really, if you have a requirement for UL or ATEX certification, I know there's a number of applications where you need to have both, where you're covering an application in United States or Canada, as well as over in Europe. It's a great product that has multiple ratings and certifications. It has the Zone 1 Division 2. And, you know, if you're just using this product for a UL Class 1 Division 2 application, one of the advantages as well over the 800R is that it has a lower temperature rating. It's rated from -55°C up to +60°C. And we also do have two different variations for the back of panel solution. So pictured to the right of the screen, we have the panel mount, which actually physically locks and latches onto the operator. That's really ideal for you know, panel builders, or if you're installing it within your own panel. And we also do have a base mount solution, which conveniently fits right inside of our 800G stations. Or if you're putting together a solution where you have a DIN rail that you're hoping to mount some of the push buttons, you can utilize that solution as well. I did want to mention very quickly as well, towards the end of this, we are coming out with a new product offering in the near future. I'm hoping it'll be here by the end of this calendar year, but we're going to have a new product subset for 800G, which has some additional global certifications. So specifically IECEX for a lot of countries outside of North America and Europe. We'll be adding some other regional certifications as well. We'll have more assembled station configurations, as I talked about, kind of incorporating the locking attachments directly into the assembled station from the manufacturer. And we're gonna have a cool new slick design for the panel mount devices where you can install a junction box, which is essentially a box with a cable gland on it. So you can run in your own cabling if you have this installed like on a machine or in a panel, and have an increased level of ingress protection rating. So look for more information about this expanded offering in the near future. I'm hoping to get some literature out there definitely within the next couple months after we go through our internal review and get the go ahead to stock inventory for launch. So the next product I'll talk about is the Bulletin 800R push button portfolio. This product has Class 1 Division 2 ratings, gas groups A, B, C, or D. UL, CSA, and CE certification. One thing that's really ideal about this solution is a lot of the times customers will use just standard push buttons. So for Rockwell Automation, Allen Bradley, we offer the Bulletin 800T or 800H as the standard 30mm push buttons. And you can achieve the Class 1 Div 2 rating by simply installing either a hermetically sealed contact block or explosion protected contact block. So it's a really great way. It's convenient if you standardize on using ordinary location products and you have a couple one-off applications that require Class 1 Division 2 applications. You can simply just buy the contact block and install it in the field, or field install it within an enclosure along with the components and have a hazardous location solution. The two different offerings we have on the market today, we have a hermetically sealed contact block, or also known as a sealed switch contact block. And then we have a newer product offering, the explosion protected contact block. I'm going to talk about those in more detail on the next slide. But again, these are available as factory assembled stations. You can buy them directly from us, all configured, or you can, field install them and put them together in the field specifically, for your configuration for your application. You could progress to the next slide. So at a very high level, kind of comparing the sealed switch contact block to the explosion protected contact block, they both have the same ratings. They have a Class 1 Division 2 rating for gas groups A, B, C, or D. So for hazardous location applications, you can use either one for your application. But really, there are a lot of advantages for the explosion protected contact block over the previously designed sealed switch contact block. At a high level, the explosion protected contact block, as standard, they come with finger safe terminal covers, and they have ring lug compatibilities where we don't have finger safe guards for the sealed switch contact block or stackable sealed switch contact block. The explosion protected contact blocks can be used for emergency stop applications. So as part of the standards, there's this requirement for direct drive, which is specifically when you push in an emergency stop and you move the plunger or actuator, there actually has to be a physical component that's pushing down to change the state of the contact. So it's either opening or closing those set of contacts. In the previous design with the sealed switch contact block, if you were to push down on the plunger, you can kind of see that on the lower left picture, the item on the back, there's a white plunger. When you depress on that, it actually just rotates a magnet inside of there. And when the magnet gets close enough to the hermetically sealed contacts, it'll open or close it through magnetic force. So in doing that, technically that doesn't comply with direct drive requirements. So if you do have emergency stop applications for Class 1 Division 2, definitely would look at the explosion protected contact block. They were designed also for high shock or vibration type applications. Inside of it, it's designed much like a labyrinth, where if there is any sort of arcing or sparking in an explosion inside of the contact block itself, it'll dissipate enough energy before it can get outside the contact block such that it can't ignite any gases, vapors, or dusts in the outside environment. If you look conversely at the sealed switch contact block, inside we have the hermetically sealed chamber. And a lot of times when using this in application, if there is a lot of shock and vibe, or something comes into contact with the contact block and physically hits it, it could potentially crack or break the seal that's used within the contact block. And then that really kind of voids the Class 1 Division 2 protection, since then, any arcing or sparking can get directly into that outside environment and cause ignition. And also another advantage for the explosion protected contact block is 10 amp current rating as opposed to the current 5 amp or 2.5 amp for the sealed switch contact block. So if you could advance the next slide. So again, when to use 800R, if you utilize standard 30mm push button solutions and you simply want to add on a contact block to give you hazardous location rating, it really is a great solution there for UL and CSA Class 1 Div 2. Some additional topics for discussion. I know there's been questions that have been brought up in the past around, 800 T&H operators using the new explosion protected contact block. I've been talking with Don King and our configuration team as well. It certainly is compatible with selector switches and trigger action emergency stop devices. We're just trying to find resources right now to physically add those configurations within Proposal Works or any of our other configuration tools. So it currently is in a queue, and once we have resources, they're going to go through and program and add those changes. So I apologize that it's not in there today, but certainly know that it is compatible, and you can certainly just buy a selector switch or another component without any contact blocks, and then field configure the explosion protected contact blocks. There's also been a lot of questions for the explosion protected contact block. The configuration today is one normally open, one normally closed contact. Are we planning on having either a two normally open or a two normally closed contact block? And at the moment, no, we're sticking with the one normally open and one normally closed contact block design. And you could simply add more than one contact block to the configuration and stack them in order to achieve more than just the one normally open or one normally closed contact arrangement. There also is some literature out there that's outdated that really promotes this product as having a Class 1 Div 2 rating as well as a Class 2 Div 2 rating. I do want to let everyone know the product line today does not have Class 2 Division 2 ratings for dust applications, but we are in works right now with certification agency to renew that rating for the product portfolio. It will meet the requirements. It's just somewhere along the way within our certification team, someone didn't specifically go through the steps to renew that certification. So that is currently in process. You can progress to the next slide. And then the last product portfolio that we have is the Bulletin 800H Type 7 and 9 product offering. This is our solution specifically for Division 1 areas as well as that Class 3 environment, so where that hazard is continuously present. The product does have a Type 7 and 9 explosion proof rating. Certifications, UL and CSA, and these are available as factory assembled stations, or you can buy individual components and install them inside of your own Type 7-9 explosion proof enclosure. We do sell a couple of different variations for all the different operators. We have a standard barrel length for panels up to 1 inch thick, which is shown on the right-hand side of the screen under standard barrel. And then we do have a longer barrel device as well for panels that are greater than 1 inch thick, but are less than 2.5 inches thick. For someone not working with this every day, you may ask, well, why would you have an enclosure or a panel that's so thick? As you get to some of the larger NEMA sizes for enclosures, the internal volume gets bigger inside of those solutions. And with the explosion proof type protection rating, you're not trying to prevent an explosion from occurring. You're just containing it inside of an explosion proof cast aluminum enclosure. So as you have more energy and potentially a larger explosion that could occur, you have to make the walls of that enclosure larger in order to properly contain it and ensure that that the enclosure isn't going to break or come apart if ignition does occur. These products use just standard 800T contact blocks, and they have a copper-free aluminum construction in order to minimize the potential for corrosion. So if you could progress to the next slide. So when would you really want to utilize these solutions? You know, if you're working with a hazardous area that has Division 1 requirements or Class 3 requirements, this would certainly be your go-to solution. Really highlight the convenience factor that you can purchase all the individual piece parts like the enclosure, the cover, the operator, and any accessories, and you could configure it all in the field. It's all covered as part of our UL and CSA certifications, and it maintains the proper ratings for that hazardous area. So gives you the flexibility to buy it from the manufacturer or configure it in the field. You can gang multiple stations together, so you can put up to 8 different enclosure bases. So it could theoretically give you up to 16 different operators in the same assembled station, depending on what variations you're using. And we also do have a solution to eliminate the requirements in NEC for a conduit seal off. It's called a sealed sealing well accessory, and it's shown in the picture on the lower right-hand corner. The solution basically has potting that's been installed at the factory, which actually separates the incoming wires from the field with the wires that are actually wired to the contact block. So it actually provides that physical barrier inside the enclosure and serves as a conduit seal off. And we also do have sealed switch contact blocks as well, which you may use for 800 T&H Class 1 Div 2 solutions. You can also install those on Type 7-9 push button solutions in order to eliminate the requirement for a conduit seal off. I just have that as the first topic of discussion. Per the NFPA article, they allow you to use a hermetically sealed solution in place of a conduit seal off. Another question that's frequently asked is, why doesn't the product say Division 1 on it? I see Class 1, 2, 3, I see gas groups, I see Type 7 and 9. The reason it doesn't actually say Division 1 on it is because per the definition of a Type 7 and Type 9, Type 7 actually means Division 1, and Type 9 also means Division 1 for both Class 1 and Class 2 areas. So that's why it doesn't physically say Division 1 on the product, whereas all Division 2 products would physically say, Class 1 Div 2 or Class 2 Div 2. One of the last gotchas for this product line, I've seen a lot of questions around ratings for the products for different environments. As standard, if you were to just buy the product as is, it has the indoor Type 7 and 9 rating, but you can attain additional Type 3 and Type 4 ratings when you buy accessories and use them within the assembled station solution, or have proper gasketing within your own panel when you're installing them. You can progress to the next slide. So from there, Bill or Wayne, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to cover, or if we wanted to open it up for discussion at this time.
So anybody in the audience got questions?
Starters and all those?
You went starters? Or we have a new one? No, this is specifically of rating classification. Okay. So again, in January, keep in mind we're going to do the intrinsic safety as part of the further depth within the hazardous location products, and then further on, we'll probably do some starters. Yes, probably in the spring.
Bill, what's the largest size line
on the XAFs? The question is, what is the largest size wire that can be on the XAFs?
That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head, but I will look it up and provide you some feedback. on that.
The reason I asked, we have a problem. The reason I asked, we have a problem out in the field. They're making long loops for ESD stations going hundreds of feet. And so we get a big voltage drop with 24 volts. So they bump the wire size up, but then we have a problem getting them connected underneath the contact blocks. So we'd like to be able to at least land a number 10 on them.
That's what I was gonna
If they can, but they don't look like you can get anywhere near number 10.
So did you hear that, Chris?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for the feedback. That's good to know. I'm looking through our documentation right now to see what wire size range we have.
Put a little box underneath and going up with a small one, but then you're defeating the purpose of the big wire.
Yeah, right. Right. Okay, in the meantime, for those in the audience, we do have the hazardous location brochure that he was discussing earlier, as I mentioned to some in the audience. I call it page 4. It's this page within it that is very useful for everybody. Whenever I show it, they really appreciate it because it has the various products, the product families, and then it has all the classifications and the certifications, and so it'll tell you whether it's ATEX rated or not, and whether it's a Zone 2 or not. You know, if it's just a UL classification. So we have plenty of them. There's a couple of areas under the safety products that have been updated, so we don't have yet a new brochure, but that is supposed to be coming out. Okay, if there's no more questions, Chris, did you want to do the demo of that product selection toolbox?
Sure.
I can actually
Do that. How do I take control here?
That's what Wayne is in the process of giving it to you.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Yeah, I think you're going to share your screen now.
So did you hear that? You should be able to share. Okay.
Yep. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Nothing too exciting on there right now.
Bunch of tracks.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll just do a really quick demo then of the new hazardous location selection wizard that we have. So I just opened Proposal Works, and as I mentioned, you can also get to this through our online configurator or also through our mobile application. But when you first launch Proposal Works, on this left-hand selection tab under Rockwell Automation, we have product selection wizards now. There's a selection wizard for drives. Looks like there's another one for drives, and then there's one called the hazardous location wizard. So if you double click on the hazardous location wizard, it'll bring up a screen. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, we see it good.
Okay, perfect. So if you're working on a particular application and you have your requirements around what the ratings or certifications are, just as an example, let's just say I have a class 1 Div 2 type application and I require a UL certification for the United States. In here we have basically all the different protection methods for all of our different components as well as sensors and safety that have a UL class 1 division 2 solution. So if you don't need to specifically filter by protection method and you're just going off of ratings and certifications, you can even select what category it is if you want logic, push buttons, power, sensing, or connectivity. But I just want to show you here, say I was just working on a project for UL Class 1 Division 2. It basically lists all of our product portfolios that have a UL Class 1 Division 2 rating. So I could configure power supplies, relays, all these 800Hs, the push buttons, the 800G push buttons, 800R push buttons. Keep scrolling down. We have some signaling solutions, signal conditioners, barriers, contactors, limit switches, essentially everything from our industrial components team, as well as sensors and safety. Everything that has that rating is included here. So if I were to just do one really quick, I'll just go through a power supply and I click accept. So that'll take me directly to the product configuration assistant, which you've probably seen multiple times in the past, except we've now added a couple additional filters up at the top for that. So once you've selected what your ratings and certifications are, you can go through the configuration process, like what you're accustomed to, all the different requirements that need to be vetted out before you can arrive on a correct product. And you just go through that configuration process and attain your finalized catalog string that meets all your different requirements for that solution, and knowing that it has a Class 1 Division 2 rating as well as the UL certification. There are any product portfolios that a subset of them are hazardous rated and another portion of them do not have hazardous location ratings. This tool is smart enough to actually filter out all the particular part numbers that do not have hazardous location ratings. So they're not even an option to configure them if you select hazardous location ratings and certifications. So if I were to go through this process, I could essentially, in a very quick amount of time, go through and select a number of hazardous location components for a particular project that I'm working on, and know that they have hazardous location ratings. So just do one more here. If I do need to attain any documentation around hazardous locations, so say I need to find a certificate of conformance or anything like that, if I open up a browser here, and this is our literature library page, you can simply find it by Googling, ab.com literature library or direct there. You can basically search for whatever product you're looking for. And under the publication types, we do have all of the certifications in here. So maybe I want to get a little more detailed in here and search for Bulletin family, so such as 1606, and then certification. And we actually have all of the certifications already loaded in here for Lit Library, so you don't have to go to any third-party sites. You don't have to go to UL site. You don't have to ask, a resource for CE documents or ATEX declaration of conformities or ICX documentation. Everything is in here that you could just click on, and it brings up our latest certificate of compliance. So if you're actually putting together a solution, you use that tool to find a catalog string, and then you come in here to find hazardous location certifications, or if you're in here looking for installation instructions, or you're looking for technical data as well. I mean, it's a really easy and convenient way until we have all the information loaded within ProposalWorks in order to specifically find technical information as well as certifications for a product that you selected.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So for everybody, we just want to A lot of people don't really realize that Rockwell has the largest selection of hazardous location products on the market. So it does cover a wide variety. Information on it can be found on Rockwell's website and also on Reynolds' website. On Reynolds' website, there is a blog of a past hazardous location overview. Because there's so much information on ratings and certificates and the products, we cannot get it all done within 1 hour. So that's why we highlighted just the push buttons. So our aim is that we're going to get the information out over a progression of time. So probably every 3 to 4 months, you'll see something coming out on a hazardous location area or family coming forward. So if there's no more questions or comments, then we'll close it out here. Thank you.
Thank you. Wayne or Bill, do you need me to pass this back over to you at all?